was a colleague of my beloved husband, Jules Teigel, in the history department. And because we also had a son, Charlie, who is now 29 and was born with a very rare brain anomaly. Charlie was born missing the 200 million fibers that connect the two hemispheres of the brain.
Could you tell us what Charlie's like?
Well, my dear Charlie is this vaulting 6-foot chap who looks perfectly normal. You might mistake him for a college student. But he's this guileless, innocent young man who just celebrates relationships. And so if I would be standing with someone and chatting, and Charlie happened to come into the room, he'd bound up to us and say, "It's me!" And he'd want to introduce the person I was with to me. He'd say, "This is my mom. This is Luise Custer." And then he would introduce himself, "I'm Charlie." So you had at once this seemingly completely intact young man who was really much more like a 7 or 8-year-old taking life in and sharing the adventure that life is. When we'd be with Paul, we'd share with him the latest in Charlie's life, his medical challenges, problems or issues with education. And so Paul would listen to everything we had to say and empathize, but he would often give the message that perhaps Charlie did not perceive himself as disabled in the same way that we did. That Charlie really felt himself to be a whole human being, different albeit, but someone who was entirely fully realized. And it was only in being with Paul and talking to him, I think, that we would be brought awake to how much Charlie was part of our lives, and it was Paul that brought Charlie more deeply into our hearts as a whole creature in our own universe. Something we couldn't quite fathom without the gift of Paul's insights. So it was a gift of rare measure for our family.